secret voters are not reflected in the polls. In fact, it's hard to determine if they even exist at all. But not every poll has the president trailing behind Biden in the 2020 race. With that being said, I want to bring on Helmut Norpoth. He's an election modeler and professor at Stony Brook University, who's correctly predicted 5 out of the past 6 presidential elections. So, Helmut, when we look at what your poll is saying right now, I want to let you explain it because, of course, you're a little bit more well-versed in this subject matter than I, but your poll is a little bit of an outlier than a lot of the others that we see on Real Clear Politics, for example. So what does your model show?
Well, thank you very much for letting me speak about that. It's not a poll, actually. It's a statistical model, an algorithm. It's mathematics. It's a little complicated, but it examines elections for quite a while, for about 100 years plus, since 1912. And it makes a prediction based on the performance of candidates in primaries. And especially the early primaries, New Hampshire in particular, but not alone. And the way the nominees of the parties perform in those primaries is a very canny predictor, and it actually gets it right with another predictor in the model, 25 out of 27 in the last presidential elections.
That's right. And of those 25 of the 27, I believe that you have said before that the only 2 where it didn't answer predictably were for John F. Kennedy and George W. Bush in 2000, if I'm not mistaken. And so 25 out of 27 right there, I mean, that's a very remarkable number. I mean, nowadays we live in a time where if polls are even right half the time, that's pretty good model to go off of as far as moving forward. But a lot of people will say that this is an unprecedented election. I'm sure it's something that we've heard hundreds of times ever since 2016, of course, heading into 2020 now as well. So are you confident in your model going into 2020?
Well, on top of the fact that the model gets it right 25 out of 27 times, this kind of election that we're having, where a first-term president is running for re-election without a significant challenge for the nomination,
no, you're good.
That kind of a candidate always wins. All right, there's no exception. You don't lose if you're in that kind of a situation. And just to recapitulate, Donald Trump won a commanding 85%. In the New Hampshire primary, even for a sitting president. These are exceptional numbers, better than what Obama got, what Bush got, what Clinton got, Reagan. I think I can even add him there. So there's some very strong piece of evidence why this particular president going for it will win.
And when we look at your model, for example, I know that it takes in different data. You were just explaining what data does go into it. It's a lot from the primary type of races, things of that nature. Whereas polls, that's something that you astutely point out is different than a model. The polls, of course, are asking different Americans around the country, bringing in that data of what they're giving compared to what you're doing. You're taking a more mathematical type of approach. So do you think that is something that maybe more people should be going off of in this time, since people are a little bit more skeptical about polls in 2020, acknowledging what happened in 2016?
Well, it would put a lot of people out of business if they did that. I mean, it's a multi-million, probably billion-dollar industry polling. But I mean, we had, as you said, we've seen a movie before, and the polls has had problems in 2016. I'm not sure that they have learned enough, or that they are sort of being maybe honest enough or forthcoming enough to say, okay, guys, wait a second, all right, we didn't do so well last time, so don't believe what we're saying. But instead, I mean, they're going overboard and saying this is it. I mean, Trump is almost gone; he has no chance. Double-digit lead for Joe Biden. And I found it very interesting what was in your previous segment about the secret voters and some studies that have been done about that. And I mean, that was never really fully explored in 2016, and we might learn the same lesson again.
And Helmut, when we look at this too, I think that it is an interesting time because it seems as if maybe the American electorate is also maybe looking for something different in the presidency than they were in different decades, different even most recent presidencies. I mean, the electorate that turned out, for example, for President Trump is still a little bit different of the electorate that turned out for George W. Bush, for example. I mean, even though they're generally conservatives, they were turning out for different reasons. So does that play at all into the factors that you're taking when you look at this model, or is your model strictly mathematical and kind of ignores the emotional components or even the different ideological components that may go into polling in most certain circumstances?
Well, you're certainly right. And I think we have a feeling that we're sort of in a new era. I mean, Trump certainly is a very different kind of politician. I mean, he's not really a standard politician at all.
Right.
And but still trying to get used to that and trying to figure out exactly what makes him do the kind of things that he does and how do people react to it. And there's some truth to it that the reaction toward Trump, for or against him, is of a kind that we haven't seen before, I think. I mean, a little bit with Obama, a little bit with Bush, but I mean, with Reagan, I mean, there were a lot of, Democrats who liked him and Republicans who didn't like him. This time it is so much right down, you know, the party or, you know, something, and you know how people react. And I think that is a feature that's new, and why maybe some people think we should be, need a new model or do something else to make a prediction.
Yeah, and I mean, as we said, you've been right 5 of the past 6 elections, and your model, if applied to all the elections dating back to 1912, 25 of 27. I mean, that's something, a consensus that we don't see nowadays very often. So I'm interested to see how it turns out this November. But if history is any indicator, it looks like we are walking towards another re-election effort for President Trump. But Helmut, I really appreciate you coming on, breaking down these models, as you correctly said, as compared to polls. And I think that's something, too, that we're going to start looking at a little bit more in depth, is models as compared to polling, because as you said, we've seen how that's turned out before. But I appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you.